The IEC in the Western Cape is calling on all eligible citizens who are not registered to vote to register this weekend at their voting stations. The IEC is also inviting voters who are already registered but have changed their residential addresses to re-register in order to be allocated to the correct segment of the voters' roll.
1,572 voting stations that will be opened. Of these, 29 are temporary structures. In other words, they will be tents, simply because either there are no venues available, given the fact that these venues are pre-booked, or simply given the nature of the area.
The IEC is aiming to ensure that the majority of the citizens in the province are registered to vote, so that they can exercise their hard-earned and cherished right to vote for the government of their choice in the elections.
We had just over 3 million voters in this province. To be exact, it is 3,128,995. Those are the number of registered voters who are currently registered in our province. Age population within our province, there are 5.124,936. So just over 5.1 million South Africans in this province are eligible to vote. In other words, they can register, which means that currently 61% of the voting age population in our province are voters, and they will be able to vote.
Voting stations across the province will be open for registration from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. Corbin August, SABC News, Cape Town.
Meanwhile, the IEC in KwaZulu-Natal held a media briefing in Durban today on its preparedness for the first voter registration weekend. This is in preparation for next year's 2024 general elections. Last month, the IEC in the province started a door-to-door voter registration process in over 700 voting districts. This after the demarcation of the voting district boundaries affected the districts. Nationally, about 1,900 voting districts have been affected, most of them in KwaZulu-Natal. The IEC is urging eligible voters to SMS the identity numbers to 32810 to confirm their details on the voters' roll.
Go for this weekend's voter registration weekend, but with me now is the Provincial Electoral Officer, Mrs. Ntombifuthi Masinga, who will tell us more about their preparations for this weekend. Masinga, it's just one more day to go for the voters registration. What are the preparations for IEC for this weekend?
It's definitely all systems go. We've got all our voting stations ready. We've got 4,973 voting stations in KwaZulu-Natal, and we have over 14,000 staff that are going to be working in our voting stations. We have trained all our staff, and we are quite confident at the level of their competency going into this weekend. In terms of the materials, all our materials are now sitting with MEO offices, which are municipal electoral offices based at municipal level. All that is left now is for them to dispatch the material to voting stations. Our teams have been hard at work preparing our voter management device, the VMD that we use to automate our systems at the voting station. They've been charging those gadgets because they operate like cell phones with apps, making sure that they all have updated apps on those devices and ensuring that our staff are able to operate it. So we're just waiting to dispatch materials to voting stations on Saturday morning and open voting stations from 8 to 5 on both days.
Speaking about voting stations, previous years we've had floods. Recently we've had floods. There are some infrastructures that have not been fixed, like roads and buildings. In places like that, has IEC found alternative places where people can go and vote? What did IEC do about that?
We always assess the voting station infrastructure before we go into any election, and we did the same thing in preparation for the registration weekend. You are absolutely correct. There is infrastructure that has still not been fixed following the floods. that wrecked our province last year and the year before. We have assessed accessibility of our voting stations, and we are comfortable that all of them are accessible, even though some of the roads still need to be rehabilitated. But we are comfortable that we do have the basic amenities that we need in all our voting stations in terms of water and ablution facilities in our voting stations. We will continuously assess the voting station infrastructure, which is something that our area managers will be doing even this weekend to assess whether there is anything that needs to be fixed before elections. We will rerun that exercise again closer to elections because the situation is quite fluid when it comes to infrastructure. A road that was easy maneuverable today may be destroyed tomorrow. So it's something that we need to keep doing as we get closer to the elections to make sure that at least our stations are accessible and that we have the amenities that we need to operate a voting station.